It feels so long ago. At a now long gone video rental store, I saw this Sonic Unleashed. Before that, Sonic wasn't even a character I even knew. When I popped it in when I got home, it was awesome to actually control a character this fast. Every world was imaginative and marvelous to look at, and Sonic himself was so badass, so confident and sure of himself, and this 7-minute opening, I would watch this every time I boot up the game before actually playing it. When I returned it back, it wasn't long before I got my own copy, and ever since then, I never stopped loving Sonic the Hedgehog. Oh, but I wish that was entirely how that happened. Growing up as a Sonic fan in the 2010s was a gift and a curse. On one hand, it was easy to get the most esteemed Sonic games from most digital storefronts, including the classics and adventure titles. The amount of fan content we got from animations to Let's Plays, fan games, is great, and helped me stay interested when there wasn't much to play. On the other hand, as far as actual Sonic games, the newest mainline game I've played since is Sonic Lost World on 3DS. After that, there was a 4-year gap of time after that before a new game, and what we got looked like a baby, easy, unpolished, completely stupid game. Okay, I was hyped for Forces, but after seeing what it was, I didn't even bother buying it. I did play Mania, but I already had a bad taste in my mouth. Sonic games already felt like I grew out of them. So after that, I was just less interested, and I kept playing the old games and staying close to the community. Until 4 years later, on the 30th anniversary, a certain announcement caught my eye. Immediately I was hyped again. I'm sure to the Sega higher-ups, Colors was easy cash. The kids who played it when it came out were just now old enough to have disposable income. Guess who's one of them? Also, Colors before then was a Wii exclusive, and bringing it to all current platforms can bring it to a wider demographic. But wow, on the 30th anniversary. Maybe this choice was just to fill up some space, but shallow news that would end up being when the game released. It was buggy, it was noticeably uglier, it had quote-unquote new content. What got my head thinking was when my friend tried the remaster, and he said he hated it. It didn't even get very far in the game, but he told me that it wasn't the remaster itself, it was just that the game was boring. I still remember Colors being one of the better modern games. At least I did, but by 2020, everyone who liked Colors told you they did. The original Colors was one of the highest reviewed Sonic games, scored not only by critics but by fans as well. A lot of them say it was the best 3D Sonic game, especially at launch when most games before that were either rushed and underdeveloped or something the fans didn't want, like Sonic with a sword, or turning the main character into a werewolf. It went back to the series' roots with only Sonic playable and having Eggman as the villain, capturing innocent life. I wasn't seeing that all on the internet at the time, but I was playing Colors when it came out, and I did enjoy it. But I don't honestly know how much of that was from the game itself or just my obsession with Sonic the Hedgehog. This is what the video was all about. I have so much more in my gaming catalog that I wanted to revisit Colors to find out for myself if those feelings were more than just that. After playing the game twice, and 5 scripts later, I can fully say it doesn't, and it's changed the way I view this game for the rest of my life. Colors could have been a fresh start, taking the simple plot of the classics and modernizing it, while keeping the well-received daytime stages of Unleashed and making that the whole focus. I love the boost formula, but it certainly is not perfect because if done wrong, you make a game that feels like it plays itself. First impressions do matter, and when Colors tried making one, it did so perfectly and imperfectly. When you start a new game, instead of a 5-minute CGI cutscene, you were handed the first level with no explanation. Just go. Colors is so confident in its style and beauty that it wants you to see it front and center. So much so that I didn't notice something. Where are all the alternate paths? There are 2 times in this entire level where you can obtain a faster route, both using road grinding. But the rest might as well be running forward and hitting jump a couple of times. Also, no matter how hard I try, I can only find 3 of the 5 red rings. Maybe I should give them the benefit of the doubt. It is the first level. Maybe the second level will start picking things up. Okay, did the level designers not get paid a week? Why are there still a bunch of straight lines? I can see rings and items underground, but there isn't any way for me to collect them! The ending is just a bunch of robots just standing around so you can completely run past them too, making me ask, why are they there? What are all these crystals and capsules doing too? Every time I touch one, I just phase through it. Well, if you look at the front cover of Sonic Colors, Sonic isn't alone. Throughout the game, he saves Wisps, which are aliens that Eggman is abducting, and Wisps gives Sonic new powers and allow him to traverse levels in new ways. There is a big problem with them though, but it's best I leave that for later. Act 3 is the first level you get to use a Wisp, arguably the most stylish, Laser. It is not hard to use, but if you know the level well enough, you can pull some pretty cool tricks with it. Act 3 itself is just an okay level, teaches you the basic mechanics of using a Wisp, and is better paced than Acts 1 and 2. Act 4? What about Act 4? I finished it before finishing the sentence. And is it me, or does something about this layout feel familiar already? Act 5 is, wow, it's pretty fun. Another level with the laser wisp, and its focus is done a lot better. It feels great to use a laser, and then 2 seconds later, another one. There's a great sense of rhythm through the level. Good job. It took 5 levels to get there, but great. I hope we get more of this in Act 6! Oh, now I am just playing a Mario level. Act 6 is just a Mario level. They put Sonic in. It's entirely in 2D, and the level looks like it was made from a level editor. That's the first world! It's not a great start, and again, it took me so long to realize this. Every problem I have with this game starts here. It seeps through the rest of the game, creating a tree of annoyances that roots start here. Oh, including the story. The plot is that Eggman has allegedly changed his ways and built a theme park in his image for everyone to enjoy. What is actually happening is the park is converting Wisp into frenzy, and Eggman is harnessing it to fuel a mind control weapon aimed directly at Sonic's home planet. He names
from the aliens and Sonic's World, Sonic's World, Sonic's World, Sonic's World.
Sonic's World. The planet that all of these adventures have been on is called Sonic's World. I'm just gonna ignore that for now. Sonic and Tails, of course, aren't buying it and hop aboard to investigate the park while finding a white wisp which they name Yager, who informs them that they need to shut down all the planet's generators to free the wisps. This plot is very similar to the classics, but with a bit more explanation. Going from the adventure stories with tons of world building and gods, government projects, and epics, back to Sonic's roots is a nice breath of fresh air I hadn't felt in a while. I appreciate the attempt, though not the execution. The producer, Takashi Iizuka, stated in early interviews that Colors had its demographic around 6 to 12-year-olds, and was not for the hardcore fanbase who came from the classics. If there was any big proof of that, then it's with the script and with Sonic's characterization. Instead of a cocky but stoic hero, now the character is make jokes. That's it.
Sometimes I even impress myself. For a second there, I wasn't sure I was going to pull it off. Yeah, that's right. I'm stretching. You got a problem with that? Hey, Tails, you missed the BBBE.
Huh?
Best boss beating ever. Excuse me, giant killer robot? You want to do this the hard way or the easy way?
Some of them are so stupid it's funny, but 90% of the time they land flat on their face. I used to be more upset about this because Unleashed was my first Sonic game and the portrayal of Sonic is very different there, and that's how I associate the character. Now it's not really the only problem or the biggest problem I have with the story. Many cutscenes just don't go anywhere. A majority of them are just cutting back and forth with Sonic and Tails proceeding to make a joke. Sonic always has to make fun of the boss before fighting it. After the first world, the story just doesn't go anywhere except for a few scenes in the final world. When it does try to pull something interesting, the writing already has you expecting some nonsense. It's really off-putting when it tries to get serious with its tone and trying to remind the player that wisps are slaves and are being used for fuel. Tails is now possessed by Eggman. Better cut the Sonic proceeding to call Eggman gassy. The story feels like a list of skits they wanted to put on to amuse children, rather than telling an interesting Sonic story. At least it doesn't get too involved with the gameplay, which I'm guessing they were going for. A light story to focus on the gameplay. Too bad the gameplay is not much better. Okay, this is Starlight Carnival, the second or third world you can choose right after Tropical Resorts. Isn't it weird how so many games on the Wii make space look breathtaking? Maybe that's just me. Anyways, you see that thing Sonic is running on through space? You don't really get to do much on these. In fact, the first 17 seconds of Act 1 is just me not even touching the controller. Act 1 has 2 of these sections, where all you get to do is move the joystick back and forth to dodge lasers and smack your head on some motor bugs. But wait, you see that red ring? Oh, I missed it! Now if I really want to get that red ring, I have 2 options. Reset and do everything and take around a minute and a half just to try again, or just kill yourself so you can start right back at the last checkpoint, keeping the red rings you already have and getting another chance to grab it. As for why I wanted to get them all, I wanted to unlock Supersonic. When you grab all the red rings and beat all of Gameland's 21 stages, you will be able to access a mode in the menu called Supersonic. Turning on Supersonic loses the ability to gain wisps and you are invincible, much faster, and have infinite boost. It is really cool, but unfortunately many levels were not really made for Supersonic. Some levels there aren't even 50 rings to transform. I want to speak fairly that a lot of the red rings are simple to find, many just being out in the open or on a route you haven't found yet. Many as well are only on a certain sections, and when you leave those certain sections you can't go back, so again, die or reset if you want it. I never want to complete Sonic Colors ever again. There's just so many levels, red rings, and just things that pad out the game. Why? How about because they wanted to pad out a game that can be beaten in 3 hours? It's not that I think the game being short is a problem. Many Sonic games are short to beat, but they are rewarding to master, or just have a Chow Garden. It took me 3 hours to beat Sonic Colors. It took me 8 hours to get all the red rings on my first playthrough. Then it took me 5. Majority of those extra hours are just me going through the same levels and trying to get the red rings. I hear some of you say, well, why couldn't have you just gotten all the red rings on your first go so you wouldn't have to go back? Well, remember that big problem I said I had that I'd save later with the wisps? Now would be the best time to bring them back. I like the wisps. Not here, but maybe in their own separate series away from Sonic, then they might have worked a lot better. All wisps really do is give Sonic a new route to take. Despite being so important to the game's image, wisps aren't all that necessary. You do need them to finish the game, though when you use Supersonic, you don't have any wisp abilities anymore, and the level designers had to change the levels so you can finish the game without them, and a lot doesn't get changed. Okay, my real issue is back with the stupid red rings, and they made a whole lot of them tied to certain wisps. Then they made you track through the whole game just to unlock them for every level. To get a new wisp, you have to find the level the wisp shows on the world map and beat it. That type of wisp will then be usable in any designated level for it. So that section I was just running through the robots, I was actually supposed to destroy them all with the laser wisp. But that's Act 2, and Act 3 is where you get the laser wisp. What? What's even worse is that tons of the first world has dirt that only the drill wisp can burrow through. Guess what? You can only unlock the drill wisp in World 2. By the time I got them all, I was one world away from finishing the game, and I just said whatever, I'll get the red rings later. And when doing so, it made me realize that Sonic Colors is not a replayable game, it's an artificially replayable game. If say you could get access to all or at least half of them in World 1, then it would make that first impression a lot better. Or just make them not unlockable. Certainly would make it better for those people who have played the game like 10 times already. If you had all the wisps, you can get close to all the red rings on your first go, making it actually replayable to those who want to master it, and avoids all those awkward moments when you're just obviously supposed to use a wisp, but don't have it. In fact, after Tropical Resort, I say you should go to any world you want. I don't care if it derails the story.
Sonic's world will be under my control.
If Eggman wanted this to be a theme park, why do we have to do all these worlds in a certain order? Also, yes, there is a difficulty curve, and making it so you go to any world you want would be a pretty massive spike, but kids are intelligent, they should be able to have a choice. Colors isn't even that hard. That's what I think would make Colors more replayable and fun. They didn't have to make the wisps unlockable, but they probably did just to squeeze a couple more hours out of newcomers. The last thing I want to talk about is the level design. Unlike other Sonic games, Colors has 6 acts per world instead of 2 or 3. Originally there was going to be 2 acts plus side missions to go along with, and I believe that is what the DS versions of Colors did. Also, we have proof because in 2020, a user named skmerrick dug up the files with the names of 2 main acts plus 4 lesser acts. If you want a more detailed explanation, I'll put a link to his video explaining it all. Remember Act 4 Tropical Resort? That level took me 25 seconds to beat. That was one section ripped from Act 1. Same with 2 and 5. One can argue that there's nothing wrong with this because there are new hazards and obstacles, or the layout has changed. A little bit. But again, why would they change this in the first place? Just to have more levels? Pad out the game even more? Doubling the collectibles? That's the only reason I can see them doing this. Levels will abruptly end when you can clearly see that there is more to run on. The ending to Sweet Mountain Act 1 is the beginning of Act 2, asking me to go through a couple of loading screens just to keep going. It's not just the main acts that got butchered. There were supposed to be optional acts, but now we need to stretch the worlds to 6. Those optional levels become mandatory, which I am referring as filler levels. And they are not fun. These filler levels have a lot of experimental mechanics, like lasers and buttons, the spring trampoline levels, just running around a planet's rings until you hit some switches. They also don't feature any wisps, which really tells me that they never belonged in the main acts. What they did with the structuring of the game ruined the pacing for me and elevated every problem I have. Going from 2, 3 to 6 makes worlds feel longer than they needed to be, and it doesn't help that they're reusing layouts just to create new ones, which makes me run past the same crap over and over again, then giving me the excuse to replay all the levels because now you have all the wisps. It's all just a mess. Trying to explain all this coherently. Every problem is tied to another and it just gets worse the more you think about it. So, is there anything I like about Colors? Yes, there is so much I like about Colors. Earlier, the game wants your attention just looking at it. It's beautiful. It's currently running on Dolphin with some visual enhancements, but I promise you, it still looks amazing on original hardware. You might say it's even colorful. Really had to think of that one. What really made these graphics shine was the setting and environment. Eggman's incredible intergalactic amusement park has 6 worlds and each one of them has a distinct personality. There are no one-note grass, desert, water, you know. If we examine the first world again, the whole place is a tropical theme park with rides in the background. You even get to run through a giant tiki's mouth. Starlight Carnival used to be my favorite world if I just wanted some eye candy. Now I appreciate Planet Wisp for telling a story within its archetype. It's the planet of the Wisps, and it's now being taken over. When you start Act 1, there's tons of foliage and nature. When you go deeper, it's all power plants and industrialization. Okay, we all know Sonic music is good, surprise surprise, Colors is good music. But really, Reach for the Stars could have been the only song in the soundtrack and I would have still called it brilliant. But now we have a lot more acts per world. There is more music for each world, and that might be the best excuse for why we even got 6 acts in the first place. Some of my favorite pieces are Aquarium Park Act 1 and 2, Planet Wisp Act 1, and Terminal Velocity Act 1. All the Wisps got music made for them too. Some were probably made to be loops since players would be too focused on the game to really listen to them. Eggman has been a fun character to listen to no matter what game he's in. Colors has some really great lines delivered through cutscenes, but what makes him special in Colors is that not only did he go back to being the main antagonist, now he plasters himself through the game by having special messages play when Sonic reaches a certain area of the level. They really do give a lot of life to the setting, and are pretty hilarious.
Experience the honest genesis of the 7th sea. Captain Eggman's amazing underwater aquarium. It's really embarrassing.
Also, Gameland is really fun, and I'd argue what Colors should have been like. Gameland is side content. It's a ship out of nowhere in the middle of the map that Eggman calls the Sonic Simulator. It's glorified bonus levels that you get while collecting the red rings. The levels aren't much on their own, but they showcase how the 3-act structure was already perfect. When the main game is just 6 levels multiplied by 6 worlds of copy and pasted levels and whatever filler levels, then it's just a breath of fresh air. No red rings, no ranks. The only objective is to get through. One minor complaint about Gameland is its lack of ties to the story. It never gets mentioned despite the Chaos Emeralds in Eggman's possession, and if he did use them, he would definitely have all the power needed to use the mind control laser. In Sonic Adventure 2, 6 of them had enough power to blow up half the moon! Colors does have a lot of good things going. I just think it could have been better. I wanted it to be better, but that won't ever happen. Over these months, I've changed a lot, from where I started to where I am now finishing it, and my perception of this game was really high in the beginning, but it dimmed more and more every script I wrote. On my first playthrough, before I started red rain hunting, before I started thinking about backtracking, that was when I was having the most fun with colors. It still wouldn't be perfect or even good, but a lot of the problems wouldn't stick out like a sore thumb. The cookie cutter level design, Wisp being unlockable, the 6-act structure keep it from reaching its full potential for me. There is a lot I didn't talk about. There's only 4 original bosses and 3 of them get rehashed a second time. I did want to talk about the S ranks, but I got tired of playing before I got them all. And another reason I didn't talk about them is I wanted to focus on what I truly believed worked and didn't work. And I didn't want to pad out the video with extra things that don't really matter to me. If it isn't obvious now, I'm a big Sonic fan, and doing this project was tough. I had thought since it had been so long since I actually played Colors that it would have been easier to make, but taking off the nostalgia goggles was really tough. Throughout last year, I have come to accept that I am a Sonic fan, true and true, and probably always will be for the rest of my life. Now, I still have those nostalgic memories playing Colors. I don't think that's ever going away, but it feels impossible now to put those nostalgia goggles back on and see how I perceived it as a kid. That just feels like an impossible standard now. Maybe this video isn't the most critical, most emotional, most epic retrospective of Sonic Colors, but it was never gonna be that anyway. What I've really learned from this project is that I want to focus on making the best videos that only I can make, and talking about the games that I think deserve everyone's attention, whether that be for the good or worse. And to be fair, there are a lot of people who like and still think Colors is good. That is something I can never take from them. Just like no one can tell me Mario Galaxy isn't my favorite game of all time. I just hope this next project doesn't take this long to produce. This year has changed me a lot, and I still have tons of ideas to say about my favorite video games. Well, we will just have to see. One last thing to say is that I don't care how you feel about this game, this line makes me laugh every time.
Please remember, all planets in Eggman's incredible interstellar amusement park are, as far as you know, wholly owned properties of Eggman Enterprises and its subsidiaries. All unauthorized photography, video reproduction, or shutting down of generators is strictly prohibited. Thank you.
Eggman, I am going to save this planet, and I am going to free these aliens. No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me.